Përshëndetje të nderuar zonja dhe zotërinj. Gazeta Express gjatë javëve në vijim do të ofrojë për ju një seri të intervistave me përfaqësues të korrit diplomatik të akredituar në Prishtinë. Intervistën e parë po zhvillojmë me ambasadorin norvegjez zotin Braathu. Mr. Braathu, welcome to Gazeta Express.
Thank you very much.
And what an exciting time to be here. I know it's unfortunate with all the tear gas in the parliament and outside the parliament and the very harsh political statements as well, but it is exciting, isn't it?
It's exciting, but really, honestly, I wish it was a bit more boring. Former Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Trudeau, once said that good government makes for boring television. That's maybe not so good for journalists, but actually it's better. It would be better if things were a bit more boring.
What is your stance, your official stance, and your country's stance, of course, with regards to everything what's happening right now?
Well, let me start by answering that by saying that we want Kosovo to be a successful country. We want Kosovo to be a functioning state. We are not, obviously, we're not in the business of trying to destroy any functionality of the Republic of Kosovo. We were one of the first countries to recognize the independence of Kosovo in 2008. So our stance is based on some principles. Principle of constitutionality, rule of law, following procedures. No violence. Violence in the assembly is unacceptable. Violence in the streets is unacceptable. Protest is legitimate. Violence is not. And this is these are the lines that all of our fellow countries in Europe and America are behind.
So, Mr. Ambassador, I do realize that, but having people peacefully protesting in the streets, considering that this is a Balkan country and this is the newest country in Europe, would the government listen? Did they show so far that they were willing to listen when people have something to say against any politics conducted by the government?
Well, I think the question is equally legitimate. Would any European government listen if there are demonstrations in the streets? I think governments, at least in my part of Europe, are very sensitive to public opinion. But at the end of the day, it's about how many seats you have in the parliament or in the assembly. That's what drives politics in my country and in all European countries. Right. Would the government listen? Well, governments are wise if they do listen. Every government has to keep, I think, as they say, an ear to the ground to understand what's going on in public opinion. This is, I think, a usual thing. But at the end of the day, it's the seats you have in the parliament, and if the election that led to that distribution of seats, if the election is deemed to be adequate, fair, and free and fair, as they say, then really you just have to live with that until the next election.
Right.
And then you have to try to convince people that they should vote for your party the next election.
Yes, but should winning elections give you some sort of a carte blanche that you can pretty much agree on anything or do anything that you want? Because that's also part of the criticism that comes from the opposition, that the government and the governing coalition, because it has so many people in the parliament to vote in favor of every of their politics, and we know how that operates. Usually political parties in Kosovo don't have the amount of democracy when members of the parliament can actually do something on their own. Does winning elections give you carte blanche to go ahead with everything you want?
Not entirely. But a good part of the way, yes. Now, you said it's a Balkan country. Yes, it's also a European country. And so let's stop talking about Balkans. Let's talk about European. Kosovo has Kosovo wants to become a member of the European Union, wants to participate in European cooperation structures. This is the aspiration of Kosovo, as we understand it. Right. From that point of view, I think let's stop talking about Balkans. Let's start talking about European standards, European values. From that point of view, I think that sets a certain standard of behavior. I think if any government, also in Kosovo, tries to go too far in relation to their own membership or their own members of parliament, I actually do believe that those members and those members of parliament would react. It's not the case, I think, that any party here can instruct their voters to, or their members of parliament to do exactly as they would like. There is a lot of work that has to happen behind the scenes, and I think the difficulties actually in achieving the constitutional amendment for the specialist court last year actually demonstrates that.
It's funny that it's interesting, actually, to say the least, that you say that there is a lot of work that has to go behind the scenes, and you come from a country that is known and deemed as one of the most transparent in the world, probably. Sure. Is that really right? I mean, do we have to agree that a lot of things have to go behind the scenes?
Inside the parties, inside the party groups in Norwegian Parliament, of course. There's a lot of work that goes on. When you say behind the scenes, it doesn't mean that there's hanky-panky going on behind the scenes. It means that there's discussion, there's always a debate. There's always disagreement inside the party groups in Norway, but then they agree on a certain line and they go for it. And sometimes they also have to go into negotiations with other political parties that lead to results that nobody really is happy with. This happens all the time. It's building consensus through dialogue.
Right. Considering what the opposition says, and they say that they go to these, they use these kind of measures, the tear gas and everything in the parliament and even outside sometimes, because it's a matter of life and death for the functionality of Kosovo as a country. Are we really that much in danger, considering those two agreements, the one with Serbia and the demarcation of the border with Montenegro? Is it really that dire as the members of the opposition say?
My country doesn't believe it is. I don't know of any other Western country that believes it is. Secretary Kerry, who was here a few months ago, made it very clear, and his statement could be echoed by my country as well. We will do nothing that we believe will undermine the functionality of the Republic of Kosovo. Otherwise, everything we did in the past would be a nonsense. We are not here to undermine Kosovo, we are here to strengthen Kosovo. We want Kosovo to be a functioning state with rule of law that can take its rightful place in European cooperation. And so, I mean, let's just stop talking about the Western allies as trying to undermine Kosovo. That is a nonsense. We can have different opinions on the utility of the dialogue with the Brussels dialogue, the EU-facilitated dialogue with Belgrade or Serbia. Our position on that is that this is a good thing for Kosovo because Kosovo has to reach some kind of modus vivendi with its neighbors. And the neighbors are not only Albania, by the way. Without this, there will be continuing tension in this region. Normalization of relations is what we are striving for. Has the process been, has it fulfilled all expectations? Nope, it hasn't. Have the agreements been implemented? No, not by far. Is it an easy process? No, it's a very difficult process. But you don't have this kind of process with your best friends. You have it with people you have or countries that you have disagreements with. So it is, by its very nature, a very difficult process, a process that requires commitment and patience. And about the agreement from the 25th of August last year, when I read that agreement, I see that Kosovo's negotiators insisted that the statutes for the Association of Serbian Majority Municipalities must be approved by the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Kosovo. And that was agreed. In other words, they took the precaution that whatever was negotiated regarding the statute had to be approved as being in line with the Constitution of the Republic of Kosovo by the Constitutional Court.
Yes, but the initial agreement, according to our Constitutional Court, wasn't entirely in line with our Constitution, wasn't it?
There we have a difference of interpretation of the Constitutional Court's opinion of the 23rd of December. When I know that some people say that the Constitutional Court said that the agreement and the principles of the agreement were in contradiction to the Constitution. When we read what they wrote, we see that the Constitutional Court is clarifying the red lines that must not be breached if the statutes are to be in line with the Constitution of the Republic of Kosovo. Our position has continuously been, whatever agreements are made must be in line with Kosovo's constitution. That's what it's all about. We are not here to undermine Kosovo.
Yeah, and I hardly think that the members of the opposition believe that any of these Western countries want to undermine the Kosovo sovereignty.
No, they think we're stupid. I'm sorry. They are speaking publicly as if we are ignorant, uninformed, or stupid.
Is this something that you get out of their public statements,
yes.
or is this something that they actually told you in private?
No, this is the clear implication of the way they are speaking.
So while they are doing it, what's your...
Well, you have to ask them. Don't ask me. I'm not inside their heads.
I know, but is there an opinion or a statement that you would like to make why they are doing this? Is it because they have something to lose, or is it only a matter of just trying to be to get to the power? As
let's take it at face value. They say they are concerned about the Republic of Kosovo. It's very interesting. This is coming from some political factors who actually don't like to talk about the Republic of Kosovo.
You're actually talking about that Vendor.
Well, I mean, that's... Yeah. So, I mean, they don't... But they say they're concerned about Kosovo. Okay, we are also concerned about Kosovo. But it's, as Daoud Haridinaj said in the assembly on Friday, ambassadors come and go. And we stay. Kosovo remains. This is a very interesting comment, and it's true. But what they have to understand is that we are not here in personal capacity. Norway doesn't go away. Norway stays, as does Kosovo. Ambassadors come and go, yes, but we are not here talking just out of the air. We are talking and speaking as diplomats, professional civil servants who are advocating the policies of our countries, which are, by the way, not determined by us as ambassadors, but they're determined back home in the capitals by our political masters.
I see.
So, I mean, yes, so let's take it at face value. They are concerned about Kosovo, about the functionality of Kosovo. For the last 6-7 months, their actions have actually undermined the functionality of Kosovo by paralyzing almost everything. The place to discuss these things is the assembly. If they have arguments that can convince other people, then that's the place to do it. The border agreement with Montenegro, that should be discussed in the assembly. It should be discussed in the committee. And I mean, nobody is going to be able to convince me that Prime Minister Mustafa or Foreign Minister Thaci or anyone else in the government wants to give away a single square centimeter of Kosovo's territory. That's a nonsense. But if mistakes have been made, the place to correct those mistakes is through the normal procedures of the Assembly of Kosovo.
Speaking of the functionality of this country, which is the youngest in Europe, but one thing that has been undermining the very functionality of this country has been corruption and organized criminality. Sure. And some members of the opposition, and even those who are not necessarily supportive of the opposition, they feel frustrated that the foreign diplomats have been incredibly vocal against all these actions the recent months from the opposition, but haven't been nearly enough vocal against all the bad government that we actually had the last years.
True. Well, I mean, I hear this, but I have trouble actually understanding it. Because we've all been speaking against corruption, also publicly, not just the last 6 months, but I've been talking against corruption for the last 4.5 years that I've been here.
Yes, nobody's disputing that, but what they're saying is that you haven't been vocal enough as you're vocal now against all the actions of the opposition.
Of course we have. Of course we have. Of course we have. The problem here, and it's not just I think it's a general, how should I say, phenomena, is that people firstly tend to hear what they want to hear. And secondly, if we don't agree with someone, we're immediately put as the enemy.
It's pretty much part of our mentality, I think.
Which I think is problematic. Because your best friends will tell you what they think. Your enemies will keep their mouths shut and try to use something against you at a later point in time.
Let me ask you this. When you talked, and I'm sure you talked about corruption and organized crime with members of the government as well, when you've been critical, I'm sure you've been, did they also feel like, did they also treat you as an enemy because you're being critical towards them as well?
I think that the government understands what we are saying about anti-corruption.
Do they?
Well, they at least pretend to. But this
But that
corruption
doesn't help us, doesn't it? Only pretending.
No, but you see, you have to. It's not enough to accuse someone of corruption. They have to be sentenced. They have to be found guilty in a court of law. It's not up to an ambassador to go around saying that someone is corrupt because we think she or he is. This has to be done according, again, to procedures. And ambassadors are not the ones running those procedures. What we can do is we can say you should have institutions, you should have procedures that allow you to prosecute cases of corruption.
Which don't happen because of the influence that the government has on them.
Well, politicians, it's not just the government. Look, I have information, and I'm sure everyone does. We call it rumors. That there's corruption all over the place. And it's not just in the government, by the way. So let's just calm this down a bit. Yes, corruption destroys Kosovo. I was the first one some 3 years ago who said in a speech, corruption is an unpatriotic act. I said that publicly.
Yes.
And the people who heard that and who feel hurt by that, they have reason to feel hurt by that. We have been trying to support the rule of law in Kosovo and anti-corruption through this huge ULEX mission. Norway is also a part of that. We've had judges here, Norwegian judges, we've had Norwegian prosecutors, Norwegian policemen and women, together with personnel from from EU countries as well, and America. So, I mean, we've been trying actively to work against corruption and organized crime in Kosovo. And I'll tell you, it's in our interest to do so. Because if Kosovo turns out to be a black hole in terms of rule of law in Europe, this affects us.
Turns out, aren't we there yet?
No, you can be much worse, believe me. And if it turns out like that, then Kosovo will be a place that exports organized crime to other European countries. We don't want that. We want Kosovo to have a successful, to have a state that functions with rule of law.
If you can make a list of 3 most urgent issues that we need to deal with, what would they be?
Rule of law, number 1.
Which includes fighting corruption and organized crime as
because without rule of law, you will not have economic development. Even your own people, Kosovars, who have money, will not invest.
Right. And they aren't really.
No, they're not. You're absolutely right. So why do you think my people will come? Do you think we're stupid? We know what's going on here.
Right.
We have plenty of examples because we talk with people.
Right.
And so
number 2?
Rule of law. Rule of law. Economic development is there, but you cannot expect to have economic development unless you have rule of law. There is no serious business person who will invest in a place where she or he doesn't have trust in the legal system.
Right, I see. In the midst of all these troubles that we have recently, Mr. Thaci insisted and became president of Kosovo. Was this the right time to insist so much to become president when the tensions are so high?
That's not up to us. That's not up to a Norwegian ambassador to have any opinion on. This is how it turned out. They had the votes in the parliament. He was elected.
But he was elected in a time when members of the opposition not only were expelled by the presidency of the assembly, but they were actually forced out of the assembly.
Well, you know,
it just didn't look right.
No, I agree. It would have been better if they hadn't released tear gas on several times during that assembly session. But they did. They were given the chance to speak at the opening of the session. They were given the chance to make their points. They didn't give anyone else the chance to make their points because they released tear gas. Not just once, not just twice. They tried it even, a third time, but they were prevented. This is a kind of behavior that shows deep disrespect to their own colleagues. They are saying that all of you others are stupid. All of you others are corrupt. Come on, let's be serious. You cannot say this about all these other people who, by the way, were legitimately elected by citizens of Kosovo. As it happened in 2014, citizens of Kosovo had the chance to vote for Vetvendosia, for NISMA, for AAK. And some of them did. And we respect those voters. But we have to ask that those political options respect the voters of the other parties. which is what they are not doing, it seems to me. They say they are protecting Kosovo. Fine. We can disagree, we can have different opinions. But that difference of opinion has to be conducted within a certain institutional framework, not in the streets. You can protest in the streets, but the solutions have to be found in dialogue in the parliament.
And when you usually insist on something, you insist on something because you also want to bring something good and probably solve this kind of a crisis. And before Mr. Thaçi was elected, we spoke to several senior members of the opposition who said, before everything else, Mr. Thaçi is not this political figure that would unify not even the political elite of this country and not the country as a whole. And truly, the country has never been this polarized as it is right now. Would Mr. Thaçi's election solve this crisis? Because many people don't really believe that, don't see that.
Well, again, that's up for Kosovars to figure out. I saw Mr. Thaçi, I guess he's in between positions now,
yeah.
Has said that he will be a different type of president. He will try to be a unifying figure. I think that's a good statement, but I mean, it's not up to me as a foreigner to have any opinion on that. That's up for Kosovars to figure out.
But that's what the members of the opposition and some political analysts say. We're frustrated when foreign diplomats are very vocal when it comes to any actions taken by the opposition, but are not being very vocal or not vocal enough when Mr. Thaçi insists on becoming president in a situation like this.
No, here's the thing. We are vocal when it comes to actions which are violent. We are not going out and debating about the positions taken by the opposition on the various issues. We have our opinions, by the way, but we don't make those, at least I don't make those vocal. This is something I share with my bosses in Norway.
Yeah.
But it's the actions. That's what we're criticizing. Violence. We are saying that demonstrations is legitimate. Violence is not.
But do you believe that Mr. Thaçi has the capacity to bring everyone together and start the dialogue that is missing right now to solve the crisis, or do you think that we're heading towards early elections?
Well, he says he wants to. Let's see.
You're not going to comment any further?
No, I will not comment on that because it's not. You see, the thing is that in the past, maybe diplomats were a bit too much involved. When we ended supervised independence in 2012, the deal was that Kosovo institutions and Kosovo political factors were going to take responsibility. And we would very much like to hold you to that.
Okay.
It doesn't mean we don't have opinions, but it's the same as when we're dealing with other European countries. We don't go out and say things publicly. It's up to you guys now. You have to fix it.
In this time of these discussions and these tensions, there is always a group of people who stay neutral and do not support either way, speaking of the locals now. Mm-hmm. And some of them truly believe that all these discussions and these tensions and these harsh statements against one another is rooted completely somewhere else. It has nothing to do with those statements given in the parliament or in the media. It has to do with the specialist chambers, as they're called, that are going to deal with war crimes during the war and some that were committed after the war. Is this it? I mean, can we say that some people are worried about their careers, about their position in this society, that they're doing anything to stall the functionality of that chamber?
All I would comment is that I have also heard these opinions, and okay. When the opposition and others make their statements, our first impulse is to take those statements at face value. And it is legitimate to disagree on on all issues. Actually, we can accept that. It's the manner of disagreement, that the use of violence actually, that we have reacting against. When it comes to the specialist chambers, we fully understand that this is a very difficult issue, but it's interesting. When I travel around and I speak with non-politicians, so-called ordinary people, I have yet to hear anyone say that they don't think the specialist chambers is not a good idea. People are looking forward to the specialist chamber.
When you say people, what do you mean?
Ordinary people. They can be teachers, they can be people I meet in the street, not politicians, not members of parliament.
Well, why do you think is that? Why do the people really want that?
I think people are sick and tired and fed up with corruption. They are sick and tired of being bullied by certain factors, certain people. And I think the municipal elections of 2013 showed this very clearly. You just have to look at the results in the mayoral elections.
Right.
And you see people were voting for a new option. So I think people, and look, let's face it, we know what happened here at the end of the war in 1999 and months thereafter. People talk about it. People in Peja talk about it. People all over Kosovo are talking. Not publicly, because they're careful.
All of these things that you mentioned Peja, Mr. Ambassador. Why Peja?
That just sprung to mind. But I mean, I could just as well say Podijevo or Mitrovica. But the thing is that people know, and you know exactly what I'm saying, and so do your viewers.
Yeah.
What happened, I don't know. But I can promise you one thing. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, these things will still be preoccupying Kosovo society. I say that because now, 70 years after the Second World War, in Norway, we are talking still about things that happened in 1944 and 45.
It's an ongoing process.
The kids of people, the grandchildren of people will be asking questions. And these things will come up. So people are sick and tired of being bullied. They want things to function. People want to live like in a normal European country. Of this, I'm absolutely convinced. They're looking for options. The specialist chambers, I don't know how that will work out. It's out of our hands. There's a prosecutorial team now in The Hague. The government of Norway is supporting this process politically and financially, as are other European countries and America. Whatever happened, I don't know. That's for the courts to decide.
Do you expect for these specialist chambers to be operational soon? Because we have now a decree from the president, something that some people say should have actually been done in the parliament, but it was the president that actually decreed the agreement with Netherlands. So do you expect this specialist chambers to start working soon? And if yes, how soon?
Well, now it's not up to Kosovo, actually. Now it's up to the Netherlands. And yes, there were delays in getting it signed, long delays on the Kosovo side. The ratification came quickly through the presidential decree. I don't want to comment on that choice of procedure, but as long as it's in line with the Constitution and rules of procedure, it's okay for us.
Okay.
But now it's in the Netherlands. Now that the Netherlands Parliament are going to have a procedure. And they're not sitting around waiting for this issue, so they have other things on their agenda.
I know.
I'm afraid that it's going to take some time still, and that's unfortunate.
Well, these topics, I'm sure we can discuss the whole day, but I would like to wrap up this interview by asking you about something that I've been personally writing extensively, and some of my colleagues as well. It's the issue of radicalized Islam, political Islam, and Kosovo Mujahideen fighting in the Middle East for terrorist organizations declared as such by the United Nations Security Council. Is that also a big problem? I mean, I asked you earlier on to list some urgent issues, and you didn't mention this.
No.
Is that something that worries you?
Absolutely. It should worry everyone, and it's a very serious and dangerous issue. Kosovo society is changing, as I see it. It's changing. Young people are somehow being radicalized, either politically or in terms of religion. I think, again, rule of law and jobs, economic development is part of the explanation for that. If young people don't see a future, don't feel that they have a perspective, then they will look for options. And I think that's what's happening. By the way, not only here in Kosovo, but also in neighboring countries.
But one thing that makes us a little bit different is that we could become a country that does export this danger towards other European countries, more into the West. And there is something that we are missing. We are not a member of either Europol or Interpol. And I think Prime Minister Mustafa recently mentioned that this could further destabilize Kosovo because there is not for Kosovo it's not possible to share informations between our police and their counterparts in Europe.
Well,
could this actually make things even more complicated as they are?
It is possible to share information, but you have to go through the UNMIC structure, so it's a bit cumbersome. Government of Norway supports Kosovo's membership in Interpol and Europol. Let's be clear, we support that. We support your membership in international organizations. And we vote for you.
Right.
But the Islamic radicalization that's taking place here is extremely worrying. It's not to be underestimated. We do have information about some things that are going on, and it is every reason to be concerned. We know that some very brave individuals in the media and in politics in the past have actually highlighted these issues, and they've been threatened. Some of them have had to have police protection. Some of your colleagues, also some MPs and government officials. The very fact that this has happened, that they have been threatened, shows that this is an imminent danger. It is nothing to underestimate. It is to be taken very seriously. And my embassy, and I think all the embassies, are watching this very carefully to see how your Kosovo institutions are dealing with this. If people are arrested and then almost immediately released, well, then we start asking some questions.
And this is something that actually happened several times.
I know, and that's something that we are concerned about. Things are changing. People say to me that, yes, but we Kosovar Muslims are not like that. No, you weren't like that. But things are changing. I know, again, in Peja, I know in Gjilan, I know in Mitrovica. Kačanik is something that people talk about as well.
Yeah.
That in Dragaš, a bunch of Wahhabi guys come in, they're employed in the education system. These things are happening. We know this. So we have a picture. We are worried. We're looking at your institutions to deal with it. And improvements have taken place, yes. Things are being taken now more seriously. After the visit of the Pope to Tirana, the issue was taken much more seriously here, or actually before his visit, because there were some plans.
Something that we've noticed as well, actually.
It's still not serious enough.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and your answers.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Të nderuar zonja dhe zotëri, kaq për këtë intervistë. Intervista radhës do të jetë me ambasadoren gjermane, zonjën Angelika Vic.